I just built a $10,000 game in 30 minutes without writing a single line of code. And the craziest part, an AI agent did most of the work for me. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I created a fully monetized game using nothing but AI tools. No coding required. This isn't just some basic demo either. This game is already connected to Stripe for payments and has features people are willing to pay for. Most people think building profitable games requires thousands of hours of coding, a team of developers, and years of experience. That's the old way. Today, I'll show you the new way that 99% of aspiring game creators don't know about yet. I used just 3 AI tools total. One to build the entire game structure, another for stunning visuals, and the third for professional sound design. The main tool I'll show you is literally the most powerful AI game builder available right now, and almost nobody is talking about it. I'm going to walk you through the exact 5-step process I used from initial concept to having a finished monetized game ready to launch. By the end of this video, you'll have everything you need to build your own profitable game, even if you've never written a single line of code in your life. We're starting off by generating the first assets with AI that we'll use in the game. I added a link in the description to all the AI tools we will use with a special offer. For 3D models, I'm using Meshy. The first thing I asked for was a jet. This will be our main in-game vehicle. I described a basic fighter jet, and Meshy generated the model you're seeing here. It's simple, but works well as a starting point. Next, I wanted a more premium version of the jet, so I gave it a slightly different description. Same type of aircraft, but with a more polished look. That gave us this upgraded model, which we'll use later on for unlocks or selection. Now onto the sound. For that, I'm using 11 Labs to create custom audio. I started by describing a fighter jet sound, just the engine noise, something consistent that we can loop during flight. Then I created a second sound for the gun. This will be used when the jet fires. Both of these will be added in later when we start implementing controls and feedback. That's it for the asset generation. We now have 2 3D models and 2 sound files ready to go. Every game has to start somewhere, and in this case, it begins with the world itself. Let's kick things off by asking the AI to build a flight simulator using 3GS. Nothing complex yet, just a flat environment with a runway right down the center. I am going to keep the prompt direct. Within seconds, the scene loads and you've got a clean open space that's ready to become something much bigger. Here you could see a basic but promising setup. An airstrip in the middle, open terrain all around, and just enough room to imagine where this could go. But before we move forward, you'll probably notice it's already dropped the plane into the middle of the runway. It's not part of your plan and it gets in the way. So we will ask the AI to remove that placeholder aircraft along with any behavior or functionality it added. Once that's cleared out, what you're left with is a completely blank runway. Perfect spot to begin building from scratch. Next, it's time to bring in your own aircraft. Try to tell the AI to generate a simple plane model and attach the camera directly to it. Let's also make sure it spawns at the end of the runway, not the center, so you've got room to accelerate before taking off. That kind of placement seems small, but it sets up the whole feel of the game. As soon as the model is in, we can observe here that the camera angle feels a little tight. The view's too close to the plane and doesn't give you much room to see what's ahead. So we're going to ask the AI to pull the camera back a bit. Just like that, the field of view opens up and the space instantly feels more playable. Then let's try moving the plane, but nothing happens. The model is just sitting there. Given that, we will have to walk the AI through adding full control inputs. W and S for thrust, up and down arrows for pitch, A and D for rotation, and left, right arrows for roll. Once those are mapped in, let's give it another go, and this time it responds. Finally, the jet moves, rotates, and reacts in real time. It's not perfect yet, but it's moving, and that's a big milestone. But there's one more thing that needs attention. Right now, the plane lifts off way too easily. It feels more like a toy than a real aircraft. So we have to ask the AI to refine the flight physics. The goal is to make sure the jet can only take off once it reaches enough speed to generate lift. While you're at it, you can also ask to fix the camera. It shouldn't rotate along with the jet's movements, it just needs to follow smoothly from behind, without spinning every time the aircraft rolls or pitches. This part takes a few tries behind the scenes. There are bugs, camera issues, and a few false starts before things settle into place. But once the fixes land, everything starts working together. At this point, the basic structure is finally in place. We've got movement, physics, camera follow, and enough space to simulate an actual takeoff. It's not just testing pieces anymore. It's the first moment where the whole setup starts acting like a real game. And while it took a few retreats behind the scenes to line things up, what you're seeing here is the core foundation. Everything else, from visual polish to combat systems, starts from this exact point. The runway works, the jet moves, but the rest of the environment still feels boxed in. Let's start by giving it more room to breathe. I'll ask the AI to expand the scene and remove the harsh black edge that cuts everything off. It takes a couple of tries to get it right, but once it loads in, you can already see the difference. The space feels wider, more open, and like something you're actually meant to fly through and not just a placeholder box. With that done, we move on to combat. The goal is straightforward. When you press the space bar, the jet should fire. I'm going to ask the AI to set that up, and just like that, bullets start launching forward. But before this worked, there were a few things that needed fixing, like firing angles, position tweaks, and a few bugs. But the core system is working now, and that's what moves us forward. Next, we turn our attention to the ground itself. Right now, the terrain looks flat and dull. Let's ask the AI to swap it for a more vibrant grass field, something with richer green tones and slight color variation to break up the texture. After the update, the whole scene pops. It's still simple, but now it has a bit more life under the wings. Now it's time to bring in the HUD. Let's ask for a modern heads-up display, something clean, minimal, and similar to what you'd see in a typical flight game. When it first appears, it's static, but the layout is solid, and that gives us a place to build. To get it working, we start syncing live flight data into the UI. Speed, altitude, pitch, each value updates in real time as the jet moves. It took some back and forth to fix syncing and DOM issues behind the scenes, but once it's hooked up, the interface actually responds the way you'd expect. We also need to fine-tune the layout. The altitude meter feels a bit low on screen, so I'm going to ask the AI to shift it higher for better visibility. That one small change makes the display feel way easier to track mid-flight, especially when you're pulling maneuver. Before wrapping up, let's ask the AI to adjust the camera position again. Nothing major, just bring it slightly closer to the plane. That subtle shift tightens the view and helps the action feel more focused without losing spatial awareness. With these updates, things start feeling less like a prototype and more like an actual playable mission. The space is wider, combat is active, and the HUD reacts in real time. There were fixes along the way, definitely not instant, but this is the point where everything starts taking form. To shift the tone of the world, we're focusing on the sky and lighting next. Two small details that can completely change how the game feels. We are going to start with the skybox. The idea is to make it feel like dusk is setting in. So we'll ask the AI to give the horizon a soft evening glow and fade in a few stars on the far end of the sky. It takes a few tries behind the scenes, but eventually it sticks. You'll notice the colors start to shift, and there's just enough contrast now to suggest the day's almost over. Next, let's turn to the runway. To bring some life to it, we can ask the AI to make the lights blink slightly and increase their intensity. It also helps to bump up the ambient lighting across the scene, just enough to keep everything visible as the sky darkens. The result is subtle, but it makes a huge difference. The runway starts to feel active. In the background, we did work through a handful of things, adjusting star placement, tuning light performance, and testing out some throttle behavior that we'll cover later. But what you're seeing here is the simplified version, and it's enough to set the right mood for everything that follows. We're taking a closer look at how the plane handles in the air, specifically how it builds up speed. Right now, as soon as you press W, the throttle jumps straight to full power. It works, but it doesn't feel right. To make the acceleration more realistic, we asked the AI to update the throttle system. Instead of instantly snapping to 100%, we want it to build up gradually, like an actual aircraft would. After applying the change, the throttle now ramps up over time, giving the flight a smoother, more natural feel. In the background, we also spent some time adjusting how that throttle interacts with the plane's physics. This includes tweaking how speed affects lift, cleaning up how the jet responds at different accelerations, acceleration levels. There were also a few fixes on the HUD side to reflect the new throttle behavior and some early projectile logic changes that will come into play later on. But for now, what you get is a jet that responds more like it should. Steady acceleration, proper lift, and a flight system that finally starts to feel locked in. We've been flying around with a placeholder jet for a while now, and honestly, it's starting to feel like we're overdue for an upgrade. The controls might work, the camera might follow, but visually, it still looks like we're flying a cardboard prototype. So, we are going to head into the assets panel and upload the Jet FBX model we made earlier. It's clean, lightweight, and ready to go. Once it's in the project, the next move is simple, which is to tell the AI to swap out the old placeholder with the real jet. We're not touching anything else. No controls, no logic, just replacing the model. Then, we will ask it to scale the jet properly, so it doesn't end up looking like a toy or a giant. It takes a few adjustments behind the scenes to get the size right. There are scaling hiccups, some unexpected shifts, but eventually it lands where it needs to. Now when the scene loads, the old model is gone, and in its place is the jet we actually intended to fly. It looks sharper, sleeker, and finally fits the tone of the rest of the project. To make the plane feel a little less robotic in the air, we are going to ask the AI to add a soft wobble, just a randomized little sway to make it feel like it's reacting to wind or motion. It's not meant to go over the top, just enough to kill that floating in the vacuum look. There's a bit of trial and error here too. The first version accidentally applies the wobble to the base object instead of the mesh, which breaks the axis and sends the camera into weird angles. So we go back, rework the setup, and eventually get it to behave. Feels good seeing it finally settle into place. The model fits, the motion doesn't feel out of place, and it's not fighting the rest of the scene anymore. Took a few fixes to get here, but now it just works, and that's enough to move forward with everything else. Starting a game without a proper entry screen always feels a little incomplete. So let's add one. I'm going to ask the AI to create a modern main menu with two options: Start Game and Plane Shop. We want the design to match the rest of the interface. Clean, dark, and inspired by a fighter jet HUD. As it comes together, a few layout bugs pop up, so I handle those quickly in the background. After a couple of fixes, the UI settles in and starts to feel consistent with the rest of the game. Next, we'll add some motion to the screen. A static background doesn't do much, so I tell the AI to include a radar-style scanning animation behind the menu. It starts off a bit too aggressive, so I tweak the timing and styling until the animation feels smooth and subtle, just enough to keep the screen visually active without pulling focus from the button. Now let's create the loading screen. When you press Start Mission, the game shouldn't jump straight into the scene. I ask the AI to hold the transition while all assets and the environment fully load. That way, there's no stuttering, no objects popping in halfway. It takes a bit of trial and error behind the scenes to get the timing right, but once it lines up, the transition feels clean and uninterrupted. All of this ties the experience together. Instead of dropping straight into gameplay, there's now a clear flow. Menu, transition, then mission. It creates a rhythm that feels planned out and sets the stage before you even hit the throttle. After setting up the menu and loading system, it makes sense to give players something to work toward, something that feels like progress. That's where the aircraft hangar comes in. I am going to start by uploading the premium jet model into the assets panel. Then, let's ask the AI to build a new screen where players can choose which aircraft they want to fly. Let's keep it simple. Two options, the default jet and the premium one. If the player selects the premium jet, the AI replaces the default model in the game, but doesn't touch anything else. Just a clean file swap. That part isn't perfect right away. Expect to run into a few issues, some logic breaks and model loading bugs. But after troubleshooting a bit in the background, the hangar works the way it's supposed to. Next, we are going to add the ability to unlock the premium aircraft. I'll ask the AI here to place a button in the hangar that lets players purchase the jet. Once they click it, a Stripe payment link is copied to their clipboard. After payment, they can come back and activate the plane using a code. At this point, we also change up the hangar layout. The design gets a full refresh, and you'll notice that updated style carries forward throughout the rest of the game. It just fits better with how the project is evolving. To make the system functional, terminal, let's head to Stripe, create the premium jet as a product, then jump into the Payment Links tab to generate the checkout URL. That link gets brought back into the game and connect to the purchase button. Now when the player clicks to buy the X72 Phantom, the correct payment code gets copied instantly. Ready to go? There's definitely more going on before this gets to work. Some layout tweaks, bug fixes, logic cleanups, but what matters here is that the system works. Players can browse jets, unlock them with a payment flow and see that change reflected in-game. And just a heads up, this is one of those parts where things might take a few tries. Payment logic, UI changes, model swaps, they don't always cooperate on the first prompt. So if it doesn't click right away, that's totally normal. Visuals are cool, controls are tight, but if the game's completely silent, it just feels off. Sound is what makes everything click together, so this part really matters. I start by heading into the assets panel and uploading the sound effects I created earlier. That includes the jet engine sound and the sharp, clean gun sound. Just having these ready makes a huge difference once they're active. Now it's time to bring them into the game. I asked the AI to play the jet engine sound when the game is running and trigger the gunfire sound every time the player shoots. That's all it needs. No extra steps on the surface. But under the hood, this part actually takes more work than it looks. There are a few bugs. Component references that don't connect cleanly, and some manual fixes that need to happen before the sounds respond properly. Nothing massive, definitely not instant. I also had to skip applying some terrain and environment tweaks during this part just to keep things focused. Once the sounds are in, every action just feels more connected. Like the game finally reacts the way it's supposed to. If you've ever loaded into a game and felt like the world was just there, you know exactly what this part is about. The gameplay might be functional, the mechanics in place, but the environment feels hollow if there's no attention to detail. Right now, the runway works. You can land, you can take off, but it doesn't feel like part of a world that's been built for pilots. So this is where we start filling in those gaps. Lighting, markings, structure. It's all about turning this strip of terrain into a place that feels planned, maintained, and ready for actual use. Let's start with lighting. I asked the AI to add some direct ambient light to the runway, so it's better lit from above. Then I adjust the edge lights. The first few lights at the start of the runway turn green, then shift to yellow as you move forward, and finally end in red at the far edge. It's simple, but effective. Even from a glance, you can now tell where you are on the strip without needing a UI indicator. To improve visibility even more, I follow up with runway centerline lights. These run straight down the middle and follow the same green, yellow, red color flow as the edge lights. It's the kind of detail that adds both function and immersion, especially if you're approaching the runway during lower visibility conditions. Next, I enhance the runway surface with touchdown zone markings. These help the pilot visually identify where the aircraft should ideally make contact. Rosebud suggests this, and it definitely adds structure to what was just a blank stretch of tarmac before. Right after that, I asked for aiming point mark, 2 solid white rectangles about 1,000 feet from the runway threshold. These give a clear, focused visual cue for when and where to aim your descent. And to wrap it all up, I add a makeshift watchtower on the side of the strip. It's not about functionality. It's there to suggest that this runway is watched, managed, and part of a larger world. It's the kind of small prop that brings just enough personality to the environment without needing to explain anything. All of these tweaks layer on top of each other. And even though none of them affect how the jet flies, they completely shift how the space feels. It's no longer just a functional platform. It's part of a believable world you're actually flying in. At this point, you've probably noticed that debug data is still floating on the screen. Useful, but it feels out of place. It works for development, but not when you're trying to make the interface feel like part of the world. Let's fix that by asking the AI to make it part of the actual game UI. The first step is to remove the DOM elements completely. Then we will tell the AI to rebuild that same information inside the aircraft itself, styled and positioned like it's coming from the plane's internal coordination system, not an external overlay. I also asked the AI to rephrase the debug labels so they feel more like part of a cockpit interface. Same data, just present it in a way that matches the rest of the setup. It might seem like a small detail, but integrating the debug data directly into the aircraft makes a difference. It sits where you'd expect it, blends in with the rest of the display, and does its job without pulling you out of the experience. Everything just flows better when it looks like it belongs. Now that we are done incorporating all important elements, I will walk you through with what we have done. Let's begin by locking in an aircraft from the hangar. The selection menu loads up clean and straightforward. You pick your jet, hit start mission, and you're dropped right into the action. Here you can see the aircraft responding smoothly as you fly, banking left, tilting up, pulling back, and navigating freely through the open environment. The camera trails just behind the jet, steady and smooth, keeping your view clear the whole time. Of course, we also have to check the unlock process. Let's choose a premium aircraft, then click the Purchase Access button and the Stripe checkout page opens instantly. Once that's complete, you're good to go. You can see here that the jet unlocks and you're back in the hangar ready to fly. Start the mission again, and this time the premium model is live. Let's try to take this off. Move through the air in full control and fire at will. Press space and the shots respond right on cue. Everything synced cleanly with your movement. Here you could see the systems working together in real time. Aircraft selection, unlock flow, flight control, and firing all locked in. What you can see here is already responsive and playable. Proof that all the building blocks are in the right place. So that's where things stand for now. We have built out a working flight sim from the ground up, aircraft selection, real-time controls, firing, a fully reactive HUD, and even a working purchase flow. Of course, a lot of this doesn't work on the first try. There are plenty of small fixes, reprompts, and back and forth moments in the background that don't make it into the final cut. But that's part of the process. Once things start to click, progress moves fast. If you've been following along and have ideas for what to add next, drop them in the comments. Whether it's new weapons, smarter enemies, or even multiplayer, who knows? That might be the next thing we build. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.